is
Hello. Hi, Elena.
Hello.
So William should be on momentarily.
hello.
I can.
Wishful thinking one day I'll get there.
Okay, William, you want me to share the plan?
Sure.
I'm wondering if we should put it on the high performer one now, because we're on the high performer list. Maybe I should,
Sure we will.
maybe I should switch the form that we use, the HUD form.
Okay, so good afternoon, Valerie. I don't know who all's on.
I see Elena Andrews is on and Joan looks like she's signing in right now.
Okay.
And it looks like we had Agnes's incorrect email for many years.
Oh,
So now I have an updated email for her.
okay, good. All right, well, I guess we could start. So let me just give an overview and then we can figure out how you want to proceed with this, but I think back in 2016, 2016, Congress passed the Housing Opportunity through Modernization Act, which everybody calls HOTMA, because everything in HUD has an acronym. And it's taken, obviously, 8 years for HUD to slowly and gradually put out different, implementing provisions and regulations to put the statutory changes into effect. But HUD has basically said that housing authorities really have to adopt the changes this year. And because of all these changes, it's going to require a new 50058, which is the form that like every public housing and every Section 8 family, we have to fill out. We just call it a 5.8 form, but we have to fill out a 5.8 for every family. And it's, your family composition, your income, any deductions and exclusions and all that stuff, elderly, disabled. And so because of the statutory changes, there has to be a new 5.8 form. And the HUD pick system is so old and antiquated that it couldn't receive the new 5.8 forms. And so they've literally had to develop a new system called HIP. And HIP is not ready yet. So housing authorities cannot submit the new 5.8s
Headphones.
according to the new 5.8 with all the HOTMA changes. So, and that keeps delaying it, but I think as of January 1, HIP will be up and running, and then of course, all of our software vendors have to also be able to communicate and transmit the new 5.8 into HIP. So that's kind of what they're working on right now, because there's a a handful of software vendors that have to submit to HUD. And so they're going through all the technical stuff now. But anyway, HUD has said that these changes that they're requiring us to implement because of the change in statute, that they in and of themselves constitute a significant amendment to the annual plan. So that's why we're having to do this significant amendment to the annual plan process. And of course, when we adopt an annual plan or we do a significant amendment to the annual plan, we need to meet with the RAB, or in this case, the resident council. It's one and the same. To, talk to you guys and get your input on the changes. Now, I will tell you that these changes are not these are not staff ideas. They're not board ideas. Like, these are literally changes that HUD is implementing to the regulations and through federal register notices, implementing these different sections of the HOTMA Act, and we have to do it. So, we can walk through this and we can kind of talk about the changes that Congress and HUD are now, making to some of the forms and some of the, for example, medical deduction threshold and that kind of stuff. But I just wanted to explain up front that these are not, these aren't just changes we came up with on our own to say, hey, let's change the rules, like for this first one. Let's change the rules for the HUD 9886. These are basically being, and Valerie, we did this from time to time when you were on the board. HUD implements stuff and then we have to implement it. So that's kind of what this is.
Yeah.
But, happy to walk through it. There's quite a few pages, but we can walk through it and just, we can, talk about it. If you have questions, we can try to answer your questions. I have Yanni is joining us, and she's kind of been our HOTMA guru in terms of figuring out what changes need to be made and which policies need to be changed and that kind of stuff. But so that's kind of the overview of what this is. Valerie, I don't know if you have any questions or if you had any ideas or thoughts on how you wanted to.
I want to ask a question, Mr. Russell.
Okay.
On the admission and continued occupancy policy
Yes.
and take an application. Well, and take an application, but not only that, but if you already in housing and you have a child in college, I thought I read something about that. And if you wanted to evict the parent, can you evict the child as well if they're in college and they're on that lease?
You said you saw that in here somewhere?
No, I know I'm
Okay.
asking a question, but I'm saying, when you talk about, persons can apply over 18, I was just wondering if they're already in housing and they're in college, and if something happened and you wanted to evict the parent, do you have to evict the child as well?
I
Because
mean,
the child is not part of that. What happens?
well, typically when there's an eviction,
Uh,
regardless of what it's for, typically when there's an eviction, the entire household gets evicted. It's not just, one person or whatever. So, I mean, there might
but
be,
does HUD say that's a must, or is that like discretion upon the housing authority?
I mean, there might be some discretion. I know in the past, like I can remember a case or two where there might have been, some criminal activity or maybe a fight or something that involved,
Uh-huh.
let's say an adult child.
Mm-hmm.
And if we could work it out with the household, if they agreed to remove the adult child from the lease and I mean, there were times where, we we had them go through different steps and stuff to assure us. But there have been times where we've, removed someone from the lease to, in order to not have to evict the entire family.
Okay.
So sometimes there is some discretion on that.
Oh,
But under your example, I'm not sure if we could evict the whole household except for the kid who's off in college.
okay.
I don't know how that would work.
Okay. All right, just a thought.
I mean, I think can refresh my memory, but I think we may have, I feel like at some point we bifurcated a lease or something like that, but
We
I don't
have,
remember the details of that.
I remember a case where we had to, I believe it was one of the adult members, had an addiction problem and getting into trouble and getting arrested, and we were able to, bifurcate that lease and have that adult member leave the household um, and have the remaining family members stay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so it's um to um the housing authority have some leeway, in other words. It don't have to be a cut and dry case.
Yeah, I think there's some discretion depending on the circumstances and stuff.
Okay. I anybody else want to say anything? Or I I read through this, and and I didn't find anything wrong with it. But this I know we're meeting on this particular uh, stuff. Um, when it comes, you know, I didn't see it in here, but when it comes to families, that's on section 8,
Mhm.
and when they are renting from these landlords, uh tenants, um and I suppose that's one reason why people don't want to take them vouchers and move away, because tenants have no protection when it comes to section 8, because whatever the landlord say, staff take their word and don't even give tenants an opportunity at all um to be heard. So I know I didn't see anywhere where that would be a requirement, um in these papers, but in our own policies we need to have um a recourse for citizens that rent through the housing authority, because section 8 workers, they just take whatever the landlord say, and they don't give the renter no kind of leeway at all.
Okay, well, I don't think that's correct. But we do have a grievance procedure. Is that what you're talking about? Or an informal hearing?
The informal hearing, it is where you have your staff and probably your attorneys, all your staff, and the resident is there alone by themselves,
Mm,
intimidated.
well, sometimes they do have legal aid and other representatives with them. We rarely have an attorney with us. It's more to give them an opportunity to, speak to, their side of the story or why they feel like, um, the proposed actions or proposed steps are not correct. And then I think there can be a formal hearing after that as well.
Right. I just because we're trying to protect people housing however we can.
Mhm.
But I remember us talking years ago, which a lot of stuff we talked about years ago don't happen now. But when people are facing a possibility of losing their home, and that the council would be notified, so that we could see if it's some way that we can prevent going to this end. And so I think that needs to be brought back, because if I remember correctly, before, because we're supposed to be trying to house people, and before it get to that point, it was supposed to be noted to Kim Waters, and 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 so that he could see how he could be a help, but also the council would know and see if we could try to curb this thing so that people wouldn't be evicted, if it was something that could be reconciled, that we would try it. I'm not saying it'll be successful, all that, but at least we would give it a try, and the council can kind of work with these residents and so forth to try to keep them in their housing. That's off this topic right here. But if don't nobody else have anything to say about it, because I read through it and I see all the stuff that HUD wants to put in, but I think that HUD gives housing authority in a lot of cases to be open with some of these things, and and where the housing authority can be lenient, I think that it should be. That's my comment about what we're here about.
Okay,
Um,
I hear you.
so any of y'all got anything to say about it? Or did you get to read it? Or what? I mean,
Oh,
but I definitely, I'm sorry.
I didn't get to read the whole thing, Miss Val, and I would like a chance to read, and some of it I don't understand, and I have to get with someone else to talk more about this or something. But I understand what you're saying, and I agree with what you're saying on behalf of what you're saying. But otherwise, I didn't get a chance to read the whole thing. I've been out of town, visiting my dad, so I'm kind of behind. I apologize for that.
Okay. Point well taken.
Yeah, and if you have any questions, you can certainly, submit them to us, or, Valerie can submit them to us, however you want to do it. But we're happy to answer questions.
All
are you
right.
gonna go over it right now?
That's why he asked if they wanted to go over it, and nobody said nothing.
But yeah, I thought that's what we're here for.
Okay,
Well, you can do that.
we can try to walk through these. Let's see, Andrew, do you want to go? Yanni, I might turn this over to you.
Sure, yeah,
If you want to just, we don't want to read through it all, but if you
right,
want to
right.
kind of summarize.
Just the highlights, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we're starting with the ACOM, that's the public housing policies. And this also applies to Section 8, where it is required for every family to sign a release of information so we can verify employment and benefits. And that is the 9886 form. It's very simple. We've been using it for many, many years. And that will be nothing new to our family. It's just that if they leave the program, the 9886 form will be no longer in effect.
And it looks like, Yanni, they don't have to sign it every year.
They don't have to sign every year anymore. They only have to sign once. That's correct. Yes. Mm-hmm. So now, Eliminate, usually when a family is already on the program, they request a reasonable accommodation for Eliminate. But now at admission, we can determine that the Eliminate will put them through the eligibility process, and we can include the Eliminate at admission as well. And right now, there's a lot of income exclusions that HUD added. So we're gonna exclude any value of assets that does not exceed the $50,000 mark. So we will not be calculating imputed assets that are not valued at an excess of $50,000.
And it used to
So
be 5, right?
it used to be 5,000. So basically, HUD wants, our families to build wealth and to become more self-sufficient by not feeling like they cannot save money.
Good.
Could I ask you to, in each one of those sections, could you give them an example so that, some people may not really truly understand? Could you give an example of these sections so that they know what this means when it's inclusion, exclusions, and all this stuff?
Yeah, so
Sure,
like on the
sure.
asset, Yanni, like
Mhm,
if they had a savings account with 6,000 in it before
mm,
this change, we would have to impute an interest rate as income, right?
correct,
And
correct.
now they could have 49,000 in a savings account and we wouldn't have to impute any interest income, which means that, we're not going to charge them rent on the
Right,
interest
on the interest,
that an
correct.
asset or like a savings account with less than 50,000 has in it. So that a family can save now
Mhm,
really up to 50,000 and not have that count towards their income, the interest. It's only if they have an asset over 50,000 would we have to, calculate the interest on
right.
that asset and then count that interest as part of their income.
And could you go back to the first one too and give an example as well, please?
The living aid, I believe I did give an example when I said that after a family is admitted into the program, they will request a living aid. And now it would be at admission that we would also process a living aid and qualify them, and they don't have to go through that reasonable accommodation process.
Okay.
So here it just says that on the tribal kinship, any income derived by that will be excluded. Um, it looks like HUD also wants to exclude any form of income derived by for students or educational purposes. So they just added a lot of exclusions for students. So that will benefit our families that have, like Ms. Bushan was saying, our young adults that are in college. We're not going to be counting any income that derives from scholarships or internships, loans, or anything like that. And you have settlements. If somebody gets a settlement from a civil rights settlement or judgment, we're not going to count any of that. Retirement
FSS.
plans, RRAs, yeah. And that benefits our elderly families, that retired, but, cannot afford their own program because they have low income, but they do have their retirement accounts. We're not allowed to count the IRA, the retirement accounts interest that they're
So
receiving
if they have
from
like a
that.
401k, we're not,
Right,
okay.
exactly. Unless they're getting like monthly disbursements, we're not going to be counting that income, so they can build on that. And they included a lot of trusts before we were able to count distributions on trust. And now there's a more narrow on what we can count and what we cannot. So we would just have to look at what type of trust it is so we can determine if it's going to be counted or not. This section is deductions. So the dependent credit is going to stay the same, but the elderly credit is going to go up to 525, which is great for our elderly families. They can now get a bigger deduction, and that will count. That will be excluded from their income. Instead of the 400,
Deducted.
we'll exclude the 525. So I think that's great.
Yeah, it's a deduction.
What do we get
Mhm.
now, Yanni?
400.
400.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the other nice thing is they're gonna index the 525 to the consumer price index. So 10 years from now, it'll be like 630. It won't still be 525, even though, there's been inflation over the years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's a really good update that they did. They're also going to increase the threshold for to 10% instead of 3 for the medical expenses. So I think that's also great because any medical deductions, it's dollar per dollar on the family. So that will be a great benefit as well. It's gonna be it's gonna be in phases. The 10%, it's not gonna be all at once. So it'll go to 5, and then it'll go to like 7.5, and then it'll go to 10.
So that you automatically get as well?
Yes, everybody gets it. Anybody that has medical expenses, yes. Mhm.
But Yanni, this isn't necessarily good, though. Let's say, or maybe I'm thinking, maybe this is not what I'm thinking of. But right
Well, you
now,
have to,
if
well, you
my,
have,
sorry,
oh,
go
I'm
ahead.
sorry, go ahead.
If my expenses right now equal
Deducted,
3%, then they are deducted. But if this is going up, Yanni,
So I'm reading it backwards.
yeah, if it goes up to 10 and my expenses only total 3, I can't get a
You can't
deduction
get any
anymore.
deductions. Okay, I extend the sum. Okay, the sum of the following to the extent the sum exceeds 10% of annual income.
I mean, it basically means I think
Okay,
fewer residents are going to be bringing in like other
deductions. Okay,
receipts and stuff like that,
I apologize. Yeah,
unless it's like a pretty significant amount.
yeah. And
So,
right now, if you only pay like your co-pays for $2 or $3, it really doesn't benefit the family. Yeah. So if it's going up to 10%, I guess I read that wrong. I apologize.
It's okay.
so you have to turn in receipts in order to get this deduction?
Yes, that's
Yes.
always been the case.
It's
But
always been the case. Yes, always been the case. Yeah. I usually tell them when I was a case manager, I will tell my families just, get an envelope, just throw everything in there. And then at the end of the year, when you have your recertification, just bring everything in. We'll make copies and we'll give you credit for everything that is eligible for an expense deduction.
So over-the-counter medicines that you buy, that will count as well, or just prescription?
It will have to be prescriptions. Like let's say if you need, like if a family needs the pens, they will have to be prescribed by the doctor, even though you buy it over the counter. But if you have a prescription, then we'd accept those receipts.
So if you buy like zinc that you have to take every day, that
Yes,
would count because it's not prescribed, but it's a health issue.
correct. Either the doctor says it gives you a prescription, you know, like some people get prescribed vitamin D.
Yeah, it's like over the counter stuff. We don't
Right.
count.
Because you have a prescription, then yes, we will count it as a deduction. Yes.
Okay. 'Cause my
Same thing
doctor
with
told
the
me that I need to
disability
start.
assistance expense.
Okay.
Mhm. So this is a verification of assets. So we would accept any written declaration for assets that are less than $50,000. It used to be 5,000, but now it's 50,000. So if a family has, like William's example, has $49,000 in the bank, you can just write a written declaration that those are the assets that you have, and you are not required to turn in documentation.
Bank statements.
Mm-hmm.
Like if someone told us before, like, yeah, I got 6,000 in my savings account, we'd say, okay, well, we have to verify that and we need a bank statement because it was over 5.
Right.
But now it's gone up to 50.
So does that mean that I noticed that sometimes they're requesting bank statements um when the number is much lower, does that apply? They still can ask for the bank statements?
Well, so it was lower, it was 5,000 before this change, but once this change gets implemented, then it's going up to 50. So that a lot fewer residents are gonna have to turn in bank statements for this.
And I'm not saying that this is your housing authority. I'm just saying that speaking in general, I noticed that they ask for the bank statement no matter
Yes.
what.
Oh, really?
Is that what's supposed to, is this what this means here, that they cannot ask for those bank statements? Unless it's that up at that amount of money, the
Well,
49.
yeah, it depends on what the tenant declares as their assets. So if they declare over 50, then we have to verify that.
Right.
If they sign a declaration saying I have less than 50,000 assets, then we would not need to verify that. And
Okay.
Anna and Yanni, please jump in and correct me if I say something that is off base.
So I'd like to ask, so how many months of bank statements is required to ask for? Is it 4 months or 6 months? Or another number?
Well, you might be talking about verification of income,
Yes.
but I think verifying asset, I think that's just a current bank statement. Is that correct? Team?
Anna, do you want to jump in?
Yes, I'll jump in, sorry. So if it's verifying the asset, we're asking for 2 bank statements because right now, as it shows with HUD regulations, we're supposed to have like an end balance for the month prior and a beginning balance for the next month. So we're asking for 2 months bank statement just to have that history. And if the participant is not declaring anything under TIF, we are asking for the bank statements, and that is to protect us from having income discrepancies with the history of having those jobs with like, what is it called? Uber
Like
Eats and
the gig economy?
Uber Eats and Lyfts and all those employments that they get paid direct deposit into the bank accounts because it's like a different process that they use. This is how we verify that income.
Right, as opposed to a bank, pay stub.
Correct.
Times they are changing. Okay, so we're into the admin plan, Yanni.
Yes. See,
You go ahead.
so the term family under the HUD regulations is also adding the foster youth 18 to 24 that are leaving foster care. So that will be also a definition of can you go back up? I believe it's, yeah, as a family and household. So they will be considered part of the household. And we just added our special programs. We added foster youth to independence because we recently acquired vouchers. We were awarded 25 vouchers. So we just added that as another special programs that we're running right now. So the definition of annual income, it's gonna include, as we were saying before, any assets that exceeds $50,000. So it will be any interest earned for assets over the $50,000. So this is a significant change. It says add admission ownership of net family assets that exceeds 100,000 or ownership of disqualifying real property requires a denial of assistance. So, but it will be our discretion not to enforce or provide limited enforcements of the asset limitation at admission. So basically, if a family has more than $100,000 in asset, or they own property where it's defined that the family can live in that property, then they will get denied for assistance. And that also applies to public housing.
So, question. So, like, if
Valerie, you put yourself on mute.
help from the housing authority, if your property asset is over 100,000,
Yes. You would be denied, or you would disqualify. You will not be
Right, if you own a home, or if you
Mhm.
have like a savings account with like $110,000 in it,
mhm.
you would not be qualified.
or in the account, but not if
Right.
you're purchasing.
I mean, if you're purchasing it through the program, that's not an issue. This is when you're
Right.
first
Okay.
qualifying to come onto the program.
Correct.
Like if we're calling you off the waiting
Okay.
list and we find out that you own a home, you don't qualify.
Okay.
Yeah, they used to let you own a home and like somebody else is staying in there, then you get housing. They're not doing that no more.
Right. That's correct.
Right.
And this section is a lot of exclusion. So this basically, it benefits the family. So all this section, we're not counting any of that any of these items listed here, we're not counting. It's a really long list. Education savings account, lawsuits, reimbursement of cost of health and medical care expenses. So this is all for the benefit of the family. Again, it's the trust, the loans, payments received by tribal members. So all this is just for the benefit of the family, all this section.
When you say tribal members, what you mean?
Tribal members, those are
The Native
individuals.
American tribe.
Native American tribes, yes.
Shoot, I may be one of them.
And I apologize, but I do have to cut out and go to another meeting, but please continue to go through this as you are, and I'll see you all soon.
Okay.
Okay, Mr. Russell,
Yes.
if I may, would you give me a call later on today
Okay.
when you get a minute?
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Have a good day.
You too.
I will.
So this is the admin plan section, and this is the same elderly or disabled deduction for the family that went from the $400 to the $525. So that's another benefit. And again, this is the admin plan, same situation with that instead of 3%, it's going to be the 10% threshold for the medical expenses. And again, same thing with the 9886 form, which is the release for us to verify income and benefits. The family has to sign it once a year. Actually, I'm sorry, no, when they're admitted to the program, they'll sign that, and then they don't have to sign it again. And when they're terminated from the program, then it will no longer be in effect, the 9886 form.
So do you normally like send these notices out like randomly, or do you just send them out like at recertification before this new rule?
Right. So anything that changes, when it takes effect, we do have mass emails that we send out to families, letting them know if there's a new form implemented. Then we would have we mail them out, have the family review it and sign it and return it to us. So the 9886 is something that the families are very familiar with because they do sign it every year, or sometimes multiple times a year, because if they move, they will sign it again. We have to recertify them again. So this is something very common, and they know about this form from when they were admitted to the program. This talks a little bit about self-employment income and business income. So there are certain exclusions that we're going to include from people that are self-employed, any expenses that they have, any withdrawals, like if they take money out of the business for any reason, then we're not going to count that as income. This section is for the project-based programs, and it just increases our ability to project-base more units. So that also benefits the program and the families, because we can add more project-based units to our programs.
Well, that's a
Mhm.
great one. That's a really good one. Those last two
Yeah,
that you talked about, that's really great.
absolutely. Yes, yes. So yeah, we're really happy about these changes.
Okay, so those are all the changes that we are required to put in, and any other ones would be brought before the board if they decided to do them. But
So is it,
they're not on
is,
this, but they're not on this significant amendment.
but is it can the resident council like look over, because some of the ladies were saying that they didn't get a chance to see or review it, and even if it's not due to HOTMA, can they still provide you guys a copy of some of the changes they still see that may be needed, even though it is not required by HOTMA? Can they submit those to you at a later date?
Well, I don't think that it's subject to changing. It's, we need to notify if there are changes. Right,
Okay.
Ken?
Okay, well, I guess we'll ask that question of Mr. Russell when we have our next
Yeah,
meeting
I'm
with
I
sorry.
don't know.
I was asking her if the resident council didn't get a chance to review the entire document of changes, and even though they have HOTMA changes that are required, if there's other changes that they see that they'd like to see, can they submit those to you guys at a later date?
Um, I'm sure those, excuse me, I'm taking care of my daughter right now. But yes, those, you can make suggestions to it, but as far as it being part of the annual plan, and I think this annual plan is going to be approved at the next board meeting. Is that correct,
The
Andrea?
significant amendment,
The min-
this needs to still go through the hearing process, but then I think it's gonna go on to the June 10th meeting.
the June one? Okay. So yes, if there's some other things that you'd like to implement, and if it can, if it's can go in this, then I don't see why William or Mr. Russell wouldn't be able to, at least hear it to see if it's something that we can put in here or find out where it goes.
Okay, so you're saying that you have another hearing before it becomes be voted at the commission meeting? Is that what you're
It's just
saying?
it's a technicality. We have to wait 45 days in order to bring it before the board. We need to leave it for public viewing for 45 days, and then we can bring it before the board.
Okay, thank you.
May I ask a question? Andrea, so can you send this recording so we can put it on our website so that
Well, I'm gonna stop showing my face then, because I don't want my face on the internet. I mean, it's
because
really
Me
we
either.
not.
want the
These aren't
residents
supposed to, I just,
I think it's just for the information. I mean, you guys
Yeah.
look good. You look good.
May I
Oh, Lord.
suggest the transcripts and not the videos?
Right.
But not everybody, all the residents can read and
well, I can, the audios are there. You can upload the audios.
okay, do that then. That'll be good. Can you just send both
Yeah,
of them? So
yeah.
then that way,
Right. You know, the audio is fine. We just will want to put it where residents will be able to listen to it.
Okay.
or
I
you
can,
can also, they have it where you can put it on there and just fade out the face. Nobody will see the face.
well,
They
that's
have
what I'm just saying.
it.
If I know you're gonna start putting them things, then I'll just not use my video, because I just don't want my face all over the internet. It's just not
No,
something I
I think
want.
that they're just trying to put certain things on here because this is very good, this information, so that people can like see some of the changes that are happening. And so you still can probably, if you do put the video up the side or whatever, you could clear out their face so their face is not shown. They'll just be able to see the paperwork and then hear the audio.
Next time, but not this time, because I don't have that technological advanced capabilities. So anyways, Okay, so that's that. Again, William says that if you have any further questions, you're more than welcome to submit them to him. And if he doesn't know, he'll get with Yanni.
Yanni, you did really well.
Oh, thank you, Valerie.
Yeah, thank you guys for this.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Okay, so then he'll look forward to hearing from you, and I'll remind him to call you, Valerie.
Okay,
All right, thank you.
thank you.
right.
Thank you all
Right.
for talking.
Okay.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Have a good
Bye-bye.
evening. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.